Hey everybody, and welcome this week to a deep dive into the video game A Happy Place, created by Zachary Muilenburg, or Ziggity as he goes by online. You might recognize him for a fan game he released in 2019 called Super Mario Dolor, which was a switch-em-up 2D Mario fan game that starts out pretty unassuming, but as you play it, it turns dark and evil. Now, I've never been overly a Mario fan or a Mario fan game expert, but it's my understanding that despite Super Mario Dolor not really looking the most mechanically sound, technologically impressive, or for the fact it was created in the Blender game engine, it was still pretty well put together and felt great to play. That brings me back to the subject of today's video, A Happy Place. If you're anything like myself, you might be apprehensive about purchasing and playing this game. It has a certain feel about it that screams my first game, and is presented on storefronts as nothing more than your average entry-level 3D platformer. It also doesn't really help the game's case that the Blender game engine is woefully unoptimized and is extremely sus to operate. I mean, when you open A Happy Place, it runs command prompt for the duration of your playthrough. I low-key thought I got by a virus bot when somebody recommended this game to me, but thankfully that wasn't the case. This game is a horror game and is steeped in layers on layers of secrets and storytelling, where if you miss a minute, you miss a lot. We also get some of our exposition from a dev commentary playthrough that was done with and by a man named Crockett here on YouTube, and I'll be interspersing some of their dialogue concerning parts of the game I describe, so that if you see me reaching for a conclusion, you might at least see where it's coming from. So stay with me now and enjoy as we begin our deep dive into and an analysis of A Happy Place by Ziggity. It would behoove us to start at the storefronts for this game, because when I said earlier the game is unassuming, it's really unassuming. The pictures and trailer on the storefronts contain some pretty standard retro platformer gameplay with collectibles and low poly environments and characters, alongside a soundtrack that feels like a throwback straight from Grant Kirkhope, specifically Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong 64. Would you believe me though if I told you these scenes were in the same game? I mean, compare this to this. It reminds me a lot of the Inscription storefront strategy, where people had no idea before they played the game that there were any other acts other than Act 1, and so when the gameplay went from this dark 3D cabin to an 8-bit mini-adventure, people were blown away. Now granted, A Happy Place does have horror tags here and there on the storefronts, but hey. Anyways, we can move on to the game proper now. The game starts with some pretty interesting opening prose that goes, "Past the last horizon and the final midnight dream, I wait stationary surrounded. Nothing to the front and null to my blind. The prime tome, alike an island by sharp wind." This reads like bad poetry meets I'm 14 and this is deep. I mean, I've never once seen someone spell midnight as a contraction before, but it actually has some pretty far-reaching implications way down the road. Regardless, we get a full shot of the island the game takes place on, and after starting a new game, it opens with a young man falling out of the sky and into a bright, vibrant field. A lovely barbershop quartet gives us the exposition for what we're doing here, and honestly, I can't describe it nearly as good as they can sing it, so take it away, fellas.
I'm a boy and he's here. Good guy.
He's on a mission. On a mission.
And his younger brother are. Yeah, are.
He fell from the sky, from the sky, from the sky.
And it is here that he will try. We'll try. We'll try.
Let's go to the left and see what he will find.
Oh, yeah, what they said.
So, to summarize, the man in purple with the necktie named B is on a mission to find his younger brother R. We get a shot of the missing poster, which is hard to see right this second, but we can go ahead and take a look at a later image of this poster. Every line of the poster is extremely important. The first line you might think is a cheeky reference to the games A Happy Place is based on, saying R64, and that he's an age that's blurred out. Then the second line tells us that he wears orange most of the time, so despite the picture being black and white, we know who we're on the lookout for. And finally, despite being mostly blurred, the text at the bottom of the poster says, "Missing since 1997. That's all the information that doesn't mean much to us right now, but keep it under your hat for the time being, and let's explore Fern Fields. Immediately, we have a sign that describes the island we're on as Kittland, ruled over by an as of yet unseen king. The sign lists the many rules of Kittland, but chief among those rules is Rule 3068, no collecting strange gold boxes. So, after rounding the corner past the sign, we immediately break that rule and collect a strange gold box. We're then approached by a character named Jolly Moly, who introduces himself and offers us some advice by saying not to continue picking up the golden boxes, that they're dangerous. He's not sure how he knows this, just that he does. We can't use it for evidence because it's not in the game, but to set precedent precedent, listen to this clip from the dev about where Molly was originally going to get this information from.
Yeah, this guy knows.
Yeah, he knows what's up.
He knows what's up.
I was gonna add a thing where Jolie Molly talks about how, like, the walls and the floor talk to him. But I decided not to do that. Just leave it up to interpretation.
Yeah.
But again, since that's not canon, we won't use it as such. But we can use that information later on to help us come to certain conclusions. As we move forward, we'll eventually get another cutscene where we run into B's brother R, who wakes up on the top of a nearby cliff and runs away. Getting back to the game, it's time to talk about the gameplay proper. There are 10 major moles that you can collect as you travel through a level, which get added to your collective mole count once you enter the hub world. In those same hub worlds, you can use the moles with this chameleon named Connor to unlock other levels that you can enter. There are 106 moles in the game in total, and you need at least 80 of them to unlock every level in the game. You don't have to collect every mole in the game, but if you do, you get infinite photons, which are the next minor collectible that function as an enhancer to your platforming and melee attack. If you use your slap attack, it adds a projectile to it, increasing its reach, and if you jump and press the attack button at the same time, you'll perform a dive. Those two moves each consume 1 photon per use, and you can hold up to 10 photons at a time. This opens the door for some very interesting platforming cheese, as you can perform what's called a tech kick, which propels you up and away from a wall as you kick away from it. You can combo this into a dive, which generally maintains your Y value, and will let you tech kick off the wall again, which you can combo over and over to not only climb large surfaces vertically, but also horizontally. The fun kind of cheese. The major collectibles in this game are gear boxes, previously described in-game as golden boxes. Each box is made up of 6 small pieces. There are 5 boxes in total in every level, and 55 boxes in total spread out across 10 levels and 5 sub-levels. More on that shortly. For now, know the boxes follow a pretty cool formula for nearly every level. 1 box will always be constructed by collecting the 6 gear pieces spread throughout the map. 3 boxes will be related to challenges and missions in a level, and 1 box will be held by a boss in the level. I mention all of this now so that we don't get lost in the sauce that is this game when I describe Golden Gearbox challenges, or moles, without reiterating what exactly they are. The reason being that some Golden Gearbox challenges aren't really worth mentioning, like cleaning a harbor or ice skating, but other ones are much more important. Got it? Good, because we have to hop around Mole Village as we collect the gear pieces for our next box. As we do, we'll meet the mayor of the town and see an image of one of the developer's friends on the mayor's desk. The legend, Tyson88. Pretty much all of the human pictures in the game are friends of the developer, which you can find referenced and memoriamed at the end of the game. So this isn't really a "this game is haunted by Notch's dead brother" type of story implication, but a fun and loving family and friend reference by the creator. Noticed something about the NPCs we've met yet? Well, we can talk about an interesting game and story design choice now. Most of the NPCs we've ran into in the area, sans enemies, our brother, and the barbershop quartet, have all been moles. This is something we'll see across the game where most of a specific species are contained to a level just for them. Without stopping to mention it later, but to accentuate the example for now, we see moles in Fern Fields, prawns in coastal Cliffside, bats in Fever Freeway, and humans on Insomnia Island. It's not so much a "these are always found here and never there" thing to point out, but instead a "keep this in mind as we move forward" sentiment. This rule of thumb is mainly discounted by enemies, some of which we've seen already, and certainly not the least of which are Gwebbles. Gwebbles are the only enemy found in nearly every map in the game, and are usually kitted for the area they're located in, like wearing leis on the beach, or a walking stick on a mountain. Here in Fern Field though, we see the basic version, which looks like a little dopey bipedal creature that almost always is aggressive in our enemies. Once again though, in a special case, we meet a friendly Gwebble here in Mole Village, who talks about how he used to be evil until a mole taught him how to fish. Speaking of Gwebbles, at the top of the mountain here is what's called an Alpha Gwebble, which through both his attack pattern and developer commentary we understand is actually a collection of Gwebbles all fused into one big Gwebble. Alpha Gwebble says that he's been told by the king to attack all humans as they're dangerous and to guard his golden gearbox at all costs. After beating him, we're now directed towards some underwater ruins, but every gearbox we've collected along the way, including right now, we're stopped by Jolie Molly, with more warnings to please stop collecting them. Swimming into the ruins and jumping across some platforms, we make our way all the way to the back of the ruins and collect our final gearbox. As we begin to leave, we're stopped one last time by Jolly Moly, who says that he's out of a job and he's going to try to make a break for it before things go from bad to worse around here. We end up back at the platforming segment of the ruins where we can see a dead Jolly Moly, and when we try to cross the gap, the map underneath of us breaks and we fall into the nothingness below. After a few seconds of blackness, one of several deformed faces will flash briefly on the screen, denoting our transition to what's affectionately known in the community as the Dark World segments. Nearly every level has its transition at some point from a vibrant, bright, friendly light world to a twisted and difficult dark world, and this is our first taste of what exactly that entails. You'll know if you're in a dark world because all of the color gets drained in your UI, and if you pause the game and wait for around 30 seconds, text will appear at the top of your screen and say, "What's the matter? Scared?" and will force close the pause menu, returning you to the game and disabling the pause menu for a short time. As we navigate the new dark environment, we cross a bridge where, as an interesting secret, if you wait for 5 minutes, a face will appear from the darkness. As we continue on to the tunnel ahead, we see a Gwebble get grabbed by a gangly stick man and taken away. Following the rainbow footsteps, we come upon a maze where we can run into the Gwebble from before, but a much more twisted and deformed version. This Gwebble no longer stands on 2 feet, but crawls quickly on all 4. His plush extremities are replaced with sharp claws, and his short, nubby neck from before is nearly twice your own height, and his head isn't the friendly, derpy-looking Gwebble from before, but instead a cracked and twisted version. He'll chase you down and smash his head into you in hunting and waiting intervals of about 10 seconds. Fleeing from here and through a hole in the back of Fern Field, we can see the environment has changed drastically. Firstly, and most notably, the colors are all darker, and any kind of friendly environmental props like grass, flowers, butterflies, and the water we were running and swimming through earlier have all been removed or replaced with darker variants. Even the signs and NPCs in the area now say weird and cryptic things like "so much" and "what is?" And focusing more on the signs for a second, they're in some odd symbol language that has been decoded, but we're not going to cover it right now because without later added context, they wouldn't make sense. And there were a couple secrets back in the Light World Fern Field that I didn't cover for the same reason. We'll need to save those until the very end of the video to be able to understand them. Not happy you have to wait? Oh, alright. How about if I told you that the language was called Magish? Would that tide you over for now? Back to the environment. In the sky are tendrils, and around the map are glops of some substance that's an iridescent color, and have these holes in them like some kind of trypophobic nightmare. The Moly village has been mostly gooped, but one house we can enter, where before we collected a moly and a gear part, is dark, and outside of that map, you can see eyes floating in the darkness. Around the map, we can see iridescent footsteps, the same footsteps from the cave from earlier, and following them up the mountain from before where the Alpha Gwebble sat, a cutscene plays. B looks up and into the sky after a glob falls at his feet, and is face to face with some kind of a dark creature hanging from the sky. It suddenly bites down and swallows B, and we cut to a scene of inside the monster's stomach, where Beef slowly falls down into a maw with even more teeth. Just as its trap snaps, the gears come together to form a rocket, which saves B and takes him to the first hub world, Misty Grove, where he's reunited with none other than his brother R. Nearby, we can meet our first other human, Murphy, who tells us that day after day beings fall from the sky and become stranded on this island. And by stranded, he means really stranded, that nobody who comes to the island can ever leave it. He gives us a crash course on the lives mechanic in this game, and this here is your Angel's Guide to Hell, also known as a pit guide. B and R are both playable characters. They have the exact same stats and abilities, and there's only one time in the entire game that anything is different when you play as one or the other, but functionally for the entire game they're identical. You can switch from the two brothers at a bench located in nearly every level. A character can die, and if they do, they drop an orb where they died, and you immediately switch to the other brother from a checkpoint with fully restored health. If you pick up the orb, the character you're playing as refills a lot of their health, and the fallen brother becomes playable again. So for example, say you're playing as B, and you die to a Gwebble. and then as R you pick up B's dropped orb and die to the Gwebble again. You'll spawn as B this time and can collect R's orb. But let's say you die to the Gwebble as B, and then you die to the Gwebble as R. What happens then? Well, you'll lose a component. Oh, that's right, we haven't exactly covered components yet, have we? Well, there's gotta be a point to all this gearbox collecting we've been doing, and that is once we've collected all 5 boxes in a level, it becomes a rocket, the same one that saved us in the cutscene earlier, or as the game calls them, components. Components unlock boss doors as you collect them, and also function as the lives in this game. So again, returning to my example, you have 3 rockets and die twice without recovering a brother's orb. You're sent back to the main menu, and then the last checkpoint you touched, and now have 2 rockets. Die again twice, and you have 1 rocket. But where do these rockets go? Well, in every hub world, there's an entrance to what the game calls the Pit, and if you lose all your rockets, you'll be forced there as punishment. The Pit is a 5x5x6 collection of rooms, not counting the entrance room and the bottom pool room. At the entrance is a chart that'll show you which floors your rockets are on. You then have to travel to that floor and check all the rooms on that floor to find and recollect your rocket. So say I look at the chart and one of my rockets is on floor 3. I'd drop down 3 floors from the entrance and check each room systematically until I found the rocket. So if you ever see a UI that looks like this, the first number is the number of rockets you've collected in total, so basically how many levels you've completed. The second number is the number of rockets that are in the pit right now, and the final number is the first number minus the second number and represents your held rockets, which count towards boss doors. The entrance to the pit and the pool room are both located at the very center of the 5x5, so you'll at least always know how to get to those 2 places. The pool room is useless right now, but serves a function once we have all 11 rockets. You can't leave the pit while you're at 0 rockets as the entrance closes, so if you've been really throwing, you're gonna have to spend some time in the pit. On the bright side though, I can share with you a couple of secrets you can find while you're down here gathering your rockets. Firstly, one room is chosen out of the 150 generated to house a secret room that has NPC species from around the game encased in some kind of gunk-like resin. Notably, some of the characters have white eyes, and all of the resin cases have butterflies encased in them alongside the NPCs. Pocket that information for now. The second rarest room spawns several times in the pit, and is a miniature version of all the levels in the game. The last secret here is located on floor 5, and is generated on the same floor in every version of the pit, so it's consistent thankfully. Keep scouring the outer edges of the pit until you come upon a room where there normally would be an iridescent boundary you can't cross. Inside is a room with a window that faces out into a blank nothingness besides a few pieces of the pit scattered about. In the corner there's a dark Gwebble that's stuck to the ceiling, and these secret Gwebbles that are stuck to the ceiling in a few places throughout the game are always a bitch to see in the rooms they're in, but they're there, trust me. And that's about all I can say about the pit for now, which is a good thing because one more cutscene and we're in our next level proper. Back to the hub area, there's a telescope we can use to see inside of the king's castle and finally see the king himself. In his dining hall sits the fat cat. No, seriously, he's a very rotund feline. The king's Kitt corpse have seemingly prepared for him a human to chow down on, one R who is located in Misty Grove, but as they remove the cover of his cage, they see that he's gotten away somehow, which unsurprisingly infuriates the king. Back in the hub, we can travel into regular levels through these purple portals, and into bonus levels through these purple diamond-shaped portals. Moving along and into the second level, Coastal Cliffside, it's absolutely what it says on the splash screen. A very pretty and bright beachside, with boats way off in the coast sailing in the breeze. The light world side of things here is pretty straightforward and simple, so we'll shotgun it real quick. B and R have to climb to the top of a lighthouse, clean up the harbor where one grumpy Captain Ahab Prawn of the SS Shrimper berates his crew for not cleaning the harbor quick enough for them to set sail, and chase down his white whale, some massive fish he saw years ago around this very coast. It's just a small dumb detail, but Captain Prawn is the guy who taught a mole in Moley Village how to fish, and that mole taught the friendly Gwebble how to fish. You clean up the harbor, and the prawn set sail for the sea, after which you fight Nummy the shark in a boss fight. After that, you play catch up with our boys out on the ocean, where Captain Prawn says some really interesting stuff. He says that in the deep chasm below the ship, the giant fish he described earlier must be hiding, and since you're looking for sparkly golden boxes, and there is sparkling coming from the bottom of the ocean, might as well head down there and see what you can find. It's seemingly a throwaway line, But also remember for now this line Ahab says, "I've lived on this here island for as long as I can remember, but you look as if you might know something I don't." As you probably presumed, we have to hop into the water and swim to the bottom. As you get closer to the Shining, the water gets bluer, and a giant monster fish with a face on the end of a rod that grows from its forehead, similar to the esco on an anglerfish, swallows you. Another face flash, and we're in the dark world of coastal Cliffside. Moving from the starting room that's full of iridescent pillars, we come into a room that has several houses scattered around, and a pile of black gunk in the back against a wall. Two butterflies glide around the room, and if you startle them until they land on the gunk, it turns into a creature with weird vertical eyes. It'll get very close to you, but if you move to touch it, it'll run away. Heading back into the starting room, it's now blindingly white, and a hole in the back drops you down into an area where we can see the crew of the SS Shrimper and the ship itself, dead and encased in gunk. The next room we'll come across again has Magish written on the wall and is half obscured by darkness. We'll cover this towards the end of the video when we cover all the translated Magish. In the corner of this room is the black figure with the sharp eyes from before. There's really nothing special to see before we make it to the final gearbox of the level, and with it we can flee in the rocket it creates and head back to Misty Grove and then to the third world, Cinnamon City. Cinnamon City is a bustling winter township with collectible coins that rain down from the sky. As we collect golden gearboxes in this area, right before the camera pans to the next objective, a model of an upcoming enemy called the Reborn can be seen. Sometimes you have to really finagle your camera to the right spot preemptively to be able to see it though. The first objective is to climb to the rafters of a hotel, but as we climb, keep in mind this statue that we can see in the middle of the lobby. I know I keep saying keep in mind, but I promise I'll start bringing together at least a few of these things very soon. As you might expect of a level where we have a new economy collectible, a lot of objectives in this area feature that mechanic, like shopping for Mr. Pigeon, gambling, mini games, and the boss of this area, a spider mob boss named Cal Knid. You pay off Cal's henchmen to turn on him, who are named Tony, Chris, and Polly, which of course is a reference to the popular sitcom, The Tony Soprano Show. I don't quite know the significance of it, but also keep in mind the nearby mayor who says, "I can't let that spider get into my mind," as there will be a reference to it in the next level. I'd mentioned that there's only one point in the game where playing as one brother or another makes a difference, and that's here, as R is the only one who can do the construction platforming area because he has an orange shirt on, and B is the only one who can enter the club, as R is too young. Back to the final gearbox, as the camera pans towards our final objective at the clock tower, you can see the black figure from the last level peek his head from behind the locked gate. After buying the key from Mr. Pigeon, we can open the locked gate and enter the dark world of this level. A dark city modeled after downtown Salt Lake City sits with a giant clock tower in the outskirts overlooking it. We finally come face to face with some Reborn here in the town, where we can get an up-close look at them. They look generally like either B or R, but wander around motionless most of the time. Have you ever seen those goofy sleep masks that look like open eyes before? Well, that's kind of what these enemies look like they have over their eyes, which gets compounded with their attack pattern. When the clock tower hits midnight, its bell will ring and wake up all the Reborn and make them aggro. It's sort of hard to tell exactly how they attack, but if they aggro onto you while they're awake, there'll be a jump scare of an all-white Reborn and you'll take damage. While they're what I've called awake, their real eyes are revealed. There's not much of a reason to be here in town, so moving onward, we'll get another face jump scare and can start our journey through the clock tower. At the top of what you might consider the central area, behind a window, sits a character that we can't get a great look at right now, but looks similar to the statue we saw at the hotel from earlier. Just take my word for it. There's really not a ton to see in the first chunk of the clock tower. There are Reborn around, a giant inert alpha Gwebble, and one of the dangerous dark Gwebbles we saw back at Fern Field. We travel through a courtyard, and before we complete the puzzle related to him, one of the stick men again from Dark Fern Field stands blocking our way forward. Once we fill the room with light though, we come to a room where there's a giant bee Reborn, who floats behind some giant bars. He works extremely similarly to the Reborn, in that when the bell tower rings midnight, he'll jump scare you if he can see you, and after a short time he'll go back to his resting state. If you're struggling with this segment, he's got a wind up time after the clock hits midnight, so it's more like 15 after. He's got a wind down segment that starts at about 1:30. You maneuver past him in a few different sleep-wake platforming segments until you end up in a room with the final gearbox of Cinnamon City. In the corner of this room is a Gwebble once again stuck to the ceiling. Maybe another time you'll have to take my word for it. Pinky promise though. On the other side of the room, you might notice a closed off by green lattice section. Well, if you complete the tower through some tricky platforming without flipping the green hand switch and you return to this section, the green lattice will be gone and behind it a shovel. Collect the gearbox here, and as the level closes out, we'll get a shot of a reborn where we just were and can travel back to the clock tower. I didn't bring a lot of attention to it earlier, but 2 graves sit just outside of the city, and with our shovel we can dig down and into one of them where on the wall Weira is written. Behind us are 4 colored stars, blue, green, red, and white. Another time that this doesn't really make sense right now, but will soon enough. Also, as you leave, you'll notice the clock tower now has a black figure permanently on top of it, so that's cool. Taking the rocket back to the hub area, we can now travel to the 4th level, Hyper Heights. Hyper Heights is the first real level where you're going to have to flex your mastery of the platforming mechanics of the game. Jumping, climbing, tech kicks, and a new gliding segment all act as a benchmark for what you've learned in the game so far. As involved as the last level was, we only have 3 or 4 important things to talk about here. Firstly, these big frogmen inhabit this map, and one of them says that supposedly there's a world eater out beyond the range of the mountain that surrounds you. The last gearbox of the area is a race with a bunny girl, and after you collect it, the level shifts to the Dark World variant, where a giant spider monster, the World Eater, trawls the outskirts looking for a reason to swallow the world. You can hide behind all manner of different rock formations and platforms, but if he sees you, he'll swiftly begin to swallow the world. If you re-hide, he'll retreat back to the mountain range again. Uniquely, in this Dark World, an NPC gets added. One of the frogmen with all white eyes stands hiding from the World Eater and gives some dialogue about how it feels like there are spiders in his mind. So not only is this our second character talking about spiders in their brain or keeping them out, but this character gives some nightmare-fueled descriptions of that feeling as they describe the spiders whispering in their brain and their mind, body, and soul being consumed by them. Every moment that they're here, they wish they were home, and if they were home, they would treasure every moment they weren't here. This level can end one of 2 ways. The first way is that you're able to escape without him swallowing the world, and you continue on your way with the level now having a permanent World Eater in it every time you go back, so make sure you get all the mollies in it before you collect that final gearbox. And the second way is by having him swallow up the level. It's like you succeeded and failed the level simultaneously, because B and R will both die, prompting a game over and the loss of a component, but you retain the fact that you beat the level and all the mollies you collected. If you return to Hyper Heights after it's been eaten like this, it's nothing but a flat land. Don't worry though, if you didn't collect the mollies before, you can now, as they're all sitting in a big open plain. And that's all to Hyper Heights. As short as that level was, we have 2 bonus levels to go into, and while the actual levels themselves don't really have anything to talk about, in each of the bonus levels, there's a secret hole hidden in the geometry of the level that looks normal until you collide with it and fly right through it. Behind these hidden walls are different numbered hubs, which sort of look like bunkers or labs of some sort. As you approach the hubs, the level suddenly shifts to fit the dark clinical environment and lighting, tone, and music. Inside are these computers that tell an extremely interesting story of a crew from another universe that got stuck in a happy place. I'll be summarizing a lot of what's said here, but there's a lot to be said about what's said, so buckle up. At the top of every report, the same thing is written, so let's start there. The initials AW start every log, and the title of this AW is the Supreme Director of the Brotherhood. The title of all these logs is next, and is Documentation of Anomaly, a Happy Place. Still identical is the next series of numbers and letters, which read as 1998, November 21st. This is the only other date we've gotten in the game so far, besides the missing poster for R, which read missing since 1997. The next string of numbers I think is just a mock IP, and then the next small chunk of title text is exactly that. The title of this status report. As an example, this one's called Part 1 Initial, and the rest of the logs in Hub 1 read as parts, where the first log is 1.1, and then 1.2, and so on. The log states that it's been 3 EA hours and 24 EA minutes since the emergency exit 14 crash landing. All of the brothers and sisters on board were unharmed, healthy, and in stable condition. The NE radiation has already dissipated entirely, as if there was none upon the non-Uke jump. From the landing site of Hub 1, it's been detected that the immediate surrounding areas are all made up of polygonal surfaces, they're vibrant in color, bright in lighting, Earth-like and reality-altering, critically dangerous. Pausing here to give my thoughts so you don't get too lost in the jargon and the walls of text. A crew of people crash-landed into a happy place not long before the log was written, and the party was split into these hubs scattered all across the world of a happy place. Reading how the author writes EA hours and EA minutes and later calls this world Earth-like, I think we can both presume that the EA hours and EA minutes are Earth minute and hours, and that the members of this brotherhood are from Earth, or at least are headquartered from Earth. It makes sense because obviously time's going to be different on different planets, and I don't mean to bury the lead, but we'll come to discover across these logs that this crew is interspecies. Any radiation is some interesting wording, but in the same sentence, non-Uke jumps are referenced. So it's my current presumption that any radiation is non-Uke radiation, and non-Uke jumps are non-Euclidean jumps, likely how these people travel between worlds. Euclidean and non-Euclidean is kind of difficult to explain as I don't fully understand it myself, but basically, Euclid of Alexandria discovered that there are certain rules of geometry that the universe follows. The simplest example I could give you in gaming terms is that you've got a very tiny Minecraft house, but once you enter it, it's actually big on the inside. Portal's another good example of non-Euclidean geometry, as the whole game gives you a portal gun that lets you travel in a non-Euclidean fashion. Bridging real life and video games in an example, imagine walking through the door to your bathroom of your house, and you end up in Times Square, New York instead. There are some other real-life examples, but that's a much different video made by a much different person who's leagues smarter than myself. To wrap up Terminal Entry 1, it states that the nearby area is polygonal, and I find this interesting because the only reason to describe something as polygonal is if it's usually not polygonal. The only reason to describe your stomach hurting is because it normally doesn't hurt. Moving on to the second terminal, it says that something called the Vessel and all of the hubs have also become vibrant and colorful. AW describes his intent to start controlled expeditions into the environment to learn more, and that this vessel continues to regenerate for the eventual departure. Entry 1.3 makes the observation that even though there's lighting and the appropriate amount of solar radiation, there's no celestial body. Basically, even though everywhere is bright, there's no sun in the sky. This is then accented by saying that with these facts, there's a good chance they didn't enter a conventional non-Euclid gate. Entry 1.4 announces the good news that the vessel and all the hubs have regenerated the damage they sustained upon entry, but the environmental effect of becoming polygonal hasn't returned to normal. This entry had a member of the crew offer to breach the presumably unopenable doors with his ability. Something I should point out at this juncture is the fact that all of the doors and all of the hubs have been broken into, not broken out of. I don't know if this detail is relevant or accurate even, but just something I noticed. Entry 1.5 marks the end of preparations for expeditions and the announcement that the vessel has regained its former abilities, whatever those might mean. 1.6 describes some armament and armor, and presumably safety suits that upon the exploration team's exit also turned polygonal and bright. Log 1.7 says that they're not alone, and to refer to part 2 of these collection of logs for further details. At the end of this hub is a blue crystalline gearbox similar to, and at the same time unlike the golden gearboxes we've collected so far. And that's all to the first hub and bonus level, and given that bonus levels 1 and 2 are located in the same hub area, let's go ahead and cover the second hub while we're here. Like hub 1, there's not much environmental storytelling, so instead we're stuck again to logs, which have a new title, Part 2, Exploration, who reported back to the hubs the new life forms they found while exploring. Condensing reports 1 through 4, team members were outfitted with weapons and made first contact with Gwebbles. After a brief altercation with a Gwebble, the team brought it back to Hub 1 and captured it and environmental samples for testing. Log 2.5 says the first Gwebble suddenly stopped moving after 3 days. 2.6 says that some kind of probe found that the world is comprised of evenly gridded levels that contain foreign beings and objects. The nature of these levels are unknown, but seem to be intelligently designed. There's an asterisk next to foreign beings and a footnote that iterates that while there have been foreign entities, there have also been familiar entities discovered. The vessel, as it was described before, chatted with a few of these beings, and while most of them didn't remember how they got here, some recalled falling onto the island. Very similar to our opening of the game. An addendum to this log adds some tags that give an idea of what the familiar beings might be with the following words: Kittland, Lost Civilization, Lost Species, Kitt, Kittans, and Total Loss. So while we haven't really seen much of the Kittland kittens, they were apparently a lost species that this brotherhood had either met before or uncovered their existence at one point and were seemingly whisked away to a happy place. The final log entry here says that the details of manned expeditions are currently being worked out, and that AW wants to mitigate all danger to personnel before sending them anywhere. I guess the exploration team from before must have been unmanned, like a robot or drone or something. Anyways, if you're sick of the text lore dumps, then good news for you. We're done for now. And if you're on the edge of your seat waiting for the next hub, don't worry, we've got 3 more coming soon. Collecting another gearbox here and exiting the level, we can finally battle the first hub boss. An official from the Kittland Corp named Baron Bear has been sent to stop you. You have to grab her by the tail 3 times and throw her into boxes to win this fight. I can't tell you awesome advice on these bosses other than to bait a claw attack from the boss and then immediately run away from them and position yourself to grab them by their tail as they whip around following their attack. You're aiming for the bulb of their tails, not the middle or the root. After beating a Kittland Corp boss, you get a train ticket which we can take back to the hub and use to ride the train to the next hub area. In this hub area, we can look through a telescope and up into King Kitt's castle and see another cutscene. King Kitt is again sitting in his dining hall, and his servants bring him the good news that the best of the Kitt Corps are hunting for the humans now. Just then, Baron Bear falls through the ceiling, signifying her failure to handle the brothers and angering the king once again. The next level we'll be going through is Fever Freeway. Fever Freeway is a volcano surrounded by Gwebbles on motorcycles and features a pretty cool new mechanic where B&R can turn into bats and fly around the level as they need. This is another level that doesn't have a ton going on concerning how you actually achieve the objectives in Golden Gear boxes, but it does blend the light and dark world segments together when you go to actually claim the boxes. When you succeed in an objective, you're dropped way beneath the level into a really dark area. In the middle of this area is a concrete building, and every time you come down here after a box there's a monster. The monster has stolen your gear box, and you have to trick it into a spike wall trap at the very back of the structure to kill it and claim your box. Each time you claim a box, the monster changes and becomes more difficult to trick. The first phase is a really innocent and small looking monster who will only look at you if he sees you and will run away if you get too close. You have to have him back into the wall trap. The second phase monster is a taller and lankier version of the phase 1 monster, and this one, after staring at you for so long, will football charge at you, again useful to trick him into the spikes. The third phase is a similarly tall but with 2 stompy arms type of monster, and this one keeps the ability to football charge but can also melee attack you if you get too close. The fourth phase monster is a collection of enemies from the game that are an amalgamation that chases you, and is similar to phase 3 except it has a shorter charge up time and can enter nearby rooms which you might have been using up until now as safe areas from the other phases. The fifth phase monster is twice as fast as all the other ones, glows red when he's aggroed onto you, and can chase you around corners unlike previous monsters who had line of sight. Also, the unborn boss was meant to look like B, and this phase 5 monster is supposed to look like R in contrast. It's not relevant, but the Light World boss here, Obsolump, looks awesome to me. Really feels like an N64 boss, very old King Cole from Banjo-Tooie like. And that's all for Fever Freeway, another short, easy level. On to the next level, Rigged Ridge. We open with a racing rematch against Harley Hare. During this rematch though, the game logic won't actually let her complete the race before you, and when you go to cross the finish line, you're skewered through the neck by a spike. An animated face this time appears on the screen, which then cuts to B&R side by side against darkness, with an eerie face in the background. You'd think it's just to make you feel like the game is breaking, but the developer has made it a point to put special emphasis on several times throughout the game when extremities are warped in weird ways, so we'll go ahead and emphasize it here too. Both B&R's left legs are chopped into pieces, and B's right leg is warped, and R's left arm is warped. After being at this screen for a few seconds, the dark sharp-toothed face from the beginning of the game descends and moves to swallow the camera before suddenly jerking back and returning you to the end of the race from before, where Harley's been spiked to death by some gunk coming up from the floor. This level is another half-dark, half-light level, where there's no dark or light phases necessarily, but more like a light level with dark level elements. Case in point, the skybounders are feet that extend all the way up into the sky past what you're capable of seeing, that stomp on you as they chase you. The collision here is really finicky as the hitbox isn't even close to the model, but regardless, your strategy for here is to either be faster than they are and outrun them, or hide under nearby awnings or objects throughout the map to block their stomps. There's only really 2 things to talk about in this level. level, and the first is Ivan the Kitten, who helps you throughout the map with his demolition expertise, and the very odd gearbox objective names like I will find you, and you are to be consumed by me. And most interestingly, the last horizon, repeated over and over again, which echoes one of the opening lines of the game that went past the last horizon, and the final midnight dream, I wait stationary surrounded, and so on. The environment here changes as you collect gears, and those deadly Gwebbles from before are back, but other than that, there's nothing really here to see in this level. Continuing on to the final level in Hub World 2, Calcium Catacombs is a desert temple themed level full of ghosts and spirits. This is another level we can kind of breeze through the light side of without missing much. The spiky spirits here mostly all just say mortal in the catacombs, except for two of them. One says cortal in the matacombs, and another, who's seemingly much more lucid than his brethren, asks if you've seen a hidden cave around that his friends are in. The only other thing to see here on the light side of things is a trivia boss fight multiple choice question minigame where you have to guess areas from the game's name correctly or take damage. The game is hosted by a boss named Crumlin the Mummy, who announces his game show, this minigame's 37th annual extravaganza. Ziggity puts special emphasis on this line of dialogue in his dev commentary playthrough, so we'll let him say a little bit more about it himself.
I love how this guy is probably like thousands of years old, but this is just the 37th annual.
There's symbolism in that, by the way.
What?
Yeah.
I love how the only way to get lore out of you,
later.
the only way to get lore out of you is just to accidentally like mention something like, oh yeah, that's something.
Oh yeah, also that's lore, by the way, but it's fine though because this is only the first game, so technically there's no references to the future yet, functionally speaking. Can you
I can't make any definitive statements about what this means right now, and a bit of a spoiler, but I can't really draw a conclusion about this fact by the end of the video either. But when we go over the reoccurring elements of this game and big questions that go unanswered, we'll revisit this and try to take a stab at it. There's one last thing to show on this map, and it's a unique Dark World segment where instead of anything transforming or an antagonistic Dark World, the spiny spirit from before, who is lucid, tells you he found his friends. He invites you to meet them, but that they're spiritual nobility, and he recommends that you speak with these celestials with the proper etiquette. He warns you that this is your only chance to meet them, and when you enter, approach confidently, and do not back away or they won't continue talking to you. This is mirrored in the upcoming segment, as you have to walk close to these heads and stay close to them for the duration of their dialogue to keep it playing. If you leave their speaking radius, have fun playing all the way up to this point again to hear it. So entering the cave and talking to them makes for the Dark World segment of Calcium Catacombs. You speak with a giant disembodied head in darkness, and eventually several other heads appear from the darkness. But what's said exactly? Well, to paraphrase, he's surprised to see a mortal in the catacombs, similar to what the spiny spirits say. This area is where spirits are kept as prisoners, but not mortals. Here spirits are tortured and kept prisoner and consumed over time. The spirit is hopeful though, as the sight of a mortal in the prison of spirits signifies a change, and hopefully that change is for the better. If you find a way out, leave and never come back. We really can't draw any surefire or important conclusions from this exactly, but again, Ziggity says that this dialogue is more tailored towards future entries of his in this universe, so let's go ahead and hear him talk about that now.
Does this have lore significance outside of the video game?
Yes, kind of. I mean, I feel like it's pretty obvious making a game like this that there's going to be future games that expand on this stuff. The unique thing is that none of those games are going to be in any kind of like a Happy Place series or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're all like their own games. So this is the start of a universe, a very weird universe.
So, if we can't draw any conclusions from this dialogue right now, that's okay, but this isn't the last time we'll see the noble spirits in this game. For now though, we've got 2 more bonus levels to go through and 2 more sets of terminal entries to read. Hub 3's terminal entries are titled taxonomy and largely reference observations and transformations of Gwebbles under certain conditions. Entry 7.1 says that the vessel did extended recon of the area, including asking questions of the inhabitants about the nature of Gwebbles. Gwebbles call themselves Gwebbles, and the residents of these levels call the Gwebbles Gwebbles, so they must be Gwebbles. Gwebbles' behaviors include pacing in figure 8 shapes, standing idle, singing, and chasing foreign beings. One Gwebble, similar to the Alpha Gwebble from the very beginning of the game, referred to Gwebbles as the bad guys. Remember the Gwebble captured from the last series of entries? Well, logs 3.2 through 3.4 catalog a new development with this, and other Gwebbles that have been captured. It had been mentioned before that Gwebbles freeze up after a few days having been removed from their native environment. So the first captured Gwebble that had become paralyzed fell over in its pen, and its skin began bubbling. Slowly, the Gwebble's skin began trending into darker and darker tones, until finally one day, a fellow member of the Brotherhood would be attacked by it. A retelling of events by the victim describes the member making his way towards the cafeteria of the ship when he was suddenly attacked by this monstrous version of a Gwebble. It attacked in the way it does, by slamming its head into this man, and despite his species, as described by him, he faced various structural fractures. Right after he was struck, though, the Supreme Director used his ability to relocate the monster to another pre-secured pen. This personal log detailing the event confirms 3 things. Firstly, the presence of an interspecies crew, as I alluded to before. Secondly, abilities and powers that most, if not all, members of this spacefaring brotherhood possess, which again we saw referenced earlier with someone offering to use their powers to open the doors of the hub, and now where AW used his ability to relocate this monster to another pen. And the final thing confirmed here is a name for these monstrous Gwebbles, Hunter Gwebbles. Logs 3.5 and 3.6 talk about the swiftness with which the Gwebble transformed from its normal state to its hunter one, 2 milliseconds, and the new variation species name, the Hunter Gwebble. Log 3.7 breaks down for us the exact conditions for a Gwebble transformation. A Gwebble who's in its native environment is of course normal. A Gwebble outside of their environment for a day and a half on average become paralyzed. Paralyzed Gwebble who's returned to their native environment at this point returns to normal. 1 week after a paralyzed Gwebble remains paralyzed, it transforms into a Hunter Gwebble. Hunter Gwebbles in this state cannot be returned to their pre-Gwebble state even when returned to their native environment. Entry 3.8 describes the form and function of the transformed Gwebble's body, as the new sharp tendrils that protrude from their hands are not actually weapons but nerve endings. Gwebbles instead elect to strike their targets by slamming their heads down into them like a powerful sledgehammer. Their necks are extremely fast and strong. Terminal entry 3.9 describes the vessel's discovery of what residents called an Alpha Gwebble, that was, as we saw before, a giant Gwebble comprised of many Gwebble. The Brotherhood has elected not to conduct experiments or interact with this Gwebble for fear of what it might become. A terminal located outside of the map we're about to drop down into isn't numbered, but gives a warning that all beings are comprised of some material, to be explained soon, will also transform under the condition that they're removed from their native environment, and to discard all native beings effective immediately. That's all to the terminal entries in Hub 3, but as described a moment ago, we drop into some stone ruins looking area that's pretty devoid of life. That's not to say it's devoid of characters though, as we can see Crumblin, Obzalump, Nummy, and Kalkanid all laying around here. They're all present and in these states regardless of if you've beaten their levels or challenges up to this point. Traveling down and into the belly of the level, you can see a Gwebble hanging suspended and skewered by that gunk. After you collect the 3rd crystal gearbox and start to leave, the Alpha drops to the ground in a pool and quickly transforms into a massive Alpha Hunter Gwebble and gives chase through the ruins until you're finally able to make your way to an exit and back to the bonus level. 1 bonus level down, another to go. We'll have to travel through a black and white secret area called the Ballpark to access this 4th bonus level, and I promise, I'm going to talk about this place soon enough. Let's just get a few other things out of the way first, including this 4th bonus level. Located in Hub 4, Part 4 is titled P772, and the first entry doesn't have us wait very long to figure out what that stands for. Protocol 772 is a mission statement while the Brotherhood's stuck in a happy place that goes as follows. Separate the vessel and the hubs from one another, then have the brothers and sisters work from the safety of each hub and allow the vessel to be piloted by the artificial intelligence of the ship. The hubs will venture to the 5 small platform planetoids, likely where we find the hubs when we play, and the vessel will search for other bodies of land between these 5 platform planetoids. So at least now we can visualize in our mind's eye what the vessel is and what it does. The vessel and all the hubs are likely connected to one another while traveling, but can be split and piloted individually. The onboard ship AI can also pilot these parts of the ship. The vessel itself, as it's unmanned, will take on the dangerous and strenuous jobs like scouting, probing, and interacting with the locals, while the Brotherhood can remain hidden away underground. This protocol was referenced back in log 2.6 at the beginning of the Brotherhood's expeditions into a happy place, but we were talking about non-Euclidean geometry, polygonal structures, and the lost Kittland civilization, and I didn't want us to get lost in the sauce by jumping ahead in the timeline. Entry 4.2 says that the vessel has found 3 bodies of land floating and suspended from some unseen ground, and the life forms on these land masses range from robotic behavior to beings which are fully conscious, understanding, and have proper communication skills. 4.3 describes how every sample from every environment found so far that's been tested, including air, grass, dirt, and water, seem to all be different but are in fact the exact same material, only in slightly different states. They elect to call this material MMCE, short for Mono-Material Composition Entropy. This material is obviously scientifically impressive because this isn't discovering that your universe is made of atoms, but discovering that your universe is made of donuts. Maybe the analogy doesn't quite land, but putting it in literal terms, this universe is made up of one material that's only slightly different in chemical makeup, but still comprises the entire universe. It might not seem impressive right now, but maybe with the next hub we'll understand the applications of a material with a composition such as this. Entries 4.4 through 4.6 are just logs describing the struggle and eventual scientific understanding of entropy, and an existential dread of an existential threat haunts AW. The last terminal entry here says to abandon something known as Vessel 2.0 and evacuate immediately. Collecting our 4th crystal gear piece, we can again take a break from these text logs, leave the bonus level, and fight another boss. Mechanically pretty much identical to the last one, this Kittland Court boss drops another ticket, which of course, as you guessed it, unlocks the 3rd and final hub area of the game. When you unlock Connor's levels here, the very last one he unlocks has the creature from the sky from the very beginning of the game eat the moles that you give to him. One last telescope cutscene cuts to the king's dining hall again, where the scientist kid has brought some shocking news to the king. A forgotten chapter in Kittland history is unveiled as an ancient kitten fortress has been found sinking into the ocean. Despite the old architecture, the castle has modern features, including a painting of the king himself. Some officers of the Kitt Corps claim to vaguely remember the fortress, which the scientist Kitt describes as further evidence toward a theory that they have that the island erases the inhabitants' memories. The scientist wants to put together a survey team to further explore the castle, but just then, the king orders them never to return to that fortress. Thinking that the king simply might not understand the scientific value versus the inherent danger, the scientist again iterates his wish to explore with the team, but the king flies into a rage and runs them all off. The next level we'll be traveling to is Insomnia Island, where we finally can see some human inhabitants of a happy place. Especially friendly folks, those humans, as they'll give you protons if you get near to them, and they'll smile and wave too. Here we can run into Murphy again, which you might remember as the human we met in Misty Grove earlier. He's got some interesting dialogue as we are silent protagonists, so as Murphy reiterates to us what we say to him, we get an interesting perspective of B and R's mental up to this point. We tell him that we've been beating levels and progressing through a game up until now, which earns us a chastise from Murphy for not treating the situation we're in with seriousness. So, to the people who are here, the things that happen to them feel real enough when in comparison to both us the player and B&R. We talked a little bit earlier about perspective here in the game when we read AW's terminal entries about things being polygonal, and I said that the only reason to describe the world as polygonal is if to you it normally isn't. So are these real humans and real mole people and real kittens that are getting dropped into this strange universe? Something to think about. Murphy leaves us with a warning not to tread any deeper if given the opportunity, as we might become trapped, but we'll see what happens. Also, as a little Easter egg, if you idle at pretty much any point in the game, your character will gradually go to sleep, but here on Insomnia Island, you'll just sit on the ground instead. The light world side of things here doesn't have anything else special to it really, and when we get 4 out of 5 gearboxes, where the last one to collect is collecting the gearbox pieces scattered around the map, the world turns dark. Before now, the gear pieces were encased in some goop, but now they're free to collect, and a new enemy is located way off the coast, called the Angel. It doesn't look too angelic to me, but in all fairness, I've never seen an angel in real life, so This is a Slender Man-esque segment where you collect the gear pieces, and as you do, he'll pick up more and more speed. If he manages to catch you, you'll get jump scared, returned to a pillar in the center of the map, and made to recollect all the gear part pieces again, but not necessarily a game over. He's really not too hard. If you're still learning chaining long jumps to move faster than your walking speed, this is a good area to practice with an active threat. After collecting the gear boxes, you're welcome to leave, but a key is spawned near the rocket to leave the level, and you might be tempted to use it on the only locked cabin on the island in the human village. If you do this, you'll go into a very short hallway that curves into nothing, and when leaving, you'll be spat into a cave which was described in the developer commentary as being underground. And as we make our way around, we can see the Reborn again from the clock tower segment of Cinnamon City. I'm not super sure how these guys work, but it seems to me there's a timer off screen that triggers a light to speed at you from nowhere, and when it does, the Reborn are aggro for a little while. Along with Reborn, we can see some of the human residents of the island looking similar to ourselves when we're in a dark world like this. Also, there's kind of a new variant of Hunter Gwebbles that hang from the ceiling in a maze segment who screech at you and stun you if you get near to them, and then creep towards you until they can take a chunk out of you. At the end of this area is a man in a cage wearing the same getup as the man located at the top of the central area of the clock tower and who there was a statue of in the hotel in Cinnamon City. If the light speeds its way at you in this area, he'll turn towards you and have a very monstrous and deformed face. As we go to leave the level through a rocket located down a hallway, it's revealed to be an illusion, and you're then trapped in a hallway that slowly gets smaller and smaller until the monstrous man suddenly charges at the screen. The screen slowly zooms out to reveal your feet stuck in the floor within a concrete box with the monster man. In the background, we can see another version of him looking just as unpleasant as any other time we've seen him as text slowly floats up the screen. He asks if you can hear him, if it was worth it. He's not going to kill you, and he can't absorb you, so the two of you will just sit here for forever. The screen continues to pan out, and then to black, and then one of the jump scare faces, and that's Insomnia Island. Going straight from here to the flooded fortress, the level opens up in front of a giant pretty fortress that's crumbling and sinking into the water below. This level is pretty linear and short, so collecting the gearboxes is really easy, and we're going to save time and skip straight to a big room here with a painting of the portly Kitt King, confirming we're in the fortress described in the last King Kitt cutscene we saw. In the room next to this one is a rematch boss fight against Mecha Nummy, who's fired up by the scientist Kitten at the top of this room. You hop on his head, deactivating Nummy, and can make your way out of the level. The last gearbox is seemingly at the entrance to this level, and as you exit, you might notice the black figure from before way out in the distance near some pillars. As you cross the chasm here, you again might notice a monster skulking out in the water. About halfway across the platforms here, it'll come towards you and eat you, where it's revealed to be the sea monster from coastal Cliffside that swallowed you there. Another face, another room filled with iridescent pillars and floor. We can see that the sea monster has been impaled by some of the gunk similar to how Harley was killed earlier. We walk back through another familiar area, the room from before with all the houses. When you climb the incline here, there's also a spooky face behind you. Whatever. Continuing on, we'll make our way to a room full of jail cells. Some of them don't have anything in them, but the ones that do include one of the houses from before, and the dark figure from before, and a golden gear. But wait, there's a character here in the corner of the room that looks kinda familiar. He looks like a kitten with a crown, and we already know a king kitten. This one specifically looks a lot more svelte and elegant, but he's completely unresponsive and with white eyes, the same way we saw with the characters trapped in the resin substance earlier, and the frog from Hyper Heights. We're going to come to some conclusions by the end of this video. Unfortunately, I don't have to leave you hanging for now, as in the developer commentary, Ziggity has this to say about him.
I gave him a copy, like a beta copy of the game. Hey, look, it's who's this guy?
It's the real King Kitt.
Jeremy.
Whoa. Yeah.
So there you go. One mystery down, 99 to go. On the bright side, the real King Kitt is still breathing, so at least he still has a chance. We'll talk more about the white eyes and the level of absence of cognition later, but let's trudge on for a little while longer, as I need to get a little bit more evidence to draw some conclusions. This is kind of the last normal level, and we could go down the Serpent Monster path and get the last normal rocket, or do the last bonus level here, but let's go ahead and do the Hub 3 boss and the final normal boss and the neutral ending first. It'll make sense soon. Third verse, same as the second and first. We return to Hub 2 with our new ticket to take a train to the King's Castle in the Sky. Fighting past his kittens, through his dining hall, and through the now ripped painting of himself in the back, we can see a vault full of the coins from Cinnamon City, and another purple crystal to jump through. We open in a boss area where we're face to face with King Kitt. The king says that it is truly a sorry excuse for a kingdom he runs when 2 humans can make their way to his castle. He then says that nobody can escape the island, and then speaking in the third person, he says that you might defeat this puppet, but it won't mean anything, and that your choice to come here was all in vain. Nations would fall challenging Kitland before they fell into his game, but now they don't even realize their kingdom is his. The Puppet King then warns you that soon you'll meet him, and that when you do, he won't kill you, he'll instead show you something much worse than death, past the last horizon. Then the boss battle begins. This is now our third reference to the last horizon, the first being the opening sequence of the game, and then the gearbox objective named from Rigged Ridge, and now here. The king is easier and harder in a certain sense than the other Kitland Court bosses we've fought so far. His scratch attacks are much closer to the chest and less divey, so you aren't going to be able to position yourself where he'll land, but instead, maneuver through his legs when he does a slash attack and hop up and grab his tail. The third time that you do, the storm clears one last time, the king ascends into the sky defeated and leaves behind his crown. You collect it, do a little jig, and then the game ends and gives special thanks to a few people including yourself, the player, and cuts back to the main menu. Pretty anticlimactic, right? Well, lucky for you, we've got a level, a bonus level, and 2 more secret endings to go. Back in the game, we'll now travel over to the level we unlocked by feeding the molies to the monster from earlier. A dark hallway bleeds into a blindingly white hallway. Eventually, you'll find steps that lead up to a cracked doorway, and inside is a still, untextured, quiet home devoid of NPCs. A blueprint map of the area is certainly handy for navigating, as the landmarks are extremely hard to define here without details, but the map also gives us a top-down look at the area where I can best describe the very few details here. Several empty rooms, and several rooms with TV, couch, and chair setups, and a couple tables are spread throughout the map, and that's really it. When I say this home's pretty devoid of detail, I can't stress it enough. Once you've navigated the white maze and are spit out to a hallway, if you've got the photons to wall climb, you can get up to this window and look out and see the World Eater standing there. He won't attack you like before, but instead just look at you. Up some stairs and through a portal at the end of this area, we'll return to a very familiar place, Fern Field. Well, the splash screen says Fern Field, and it looks like Fern Field, but if you collect a gear, it's now renamed the Greater Surface. As we walk around, it's largely empty. Not even the Molly's houses are here now. I thought this was kind of interesting. I mean, consider the beginning of the game versus now. Fern Field at first was extremely pretty and bright and friendly. Then, when we got all the gearboxes, it became dark and dreary and goopy and evil looking. And that combo really has been the formula for the game. But here we are again, having not visited for a while, and it's completely devoid of anything. Not even really evil, just gone. If you didn't get all the moles while you were in Fern Field earlier, you can get them now, and there is one NPC scrolled away at where you start the very beginning of the game when you were dropped here. It's a hunter Gwebble, but instead of attacking you, he just gyrates in place, and you can talk to him. He speaks Magish, which presumably wouldn't mean much to us unless I translated it, but he's actually the key to translating most of Magish. This Gwebble is actually the friendly Gwebble that we met in Molly Village at the very beginning of the game, and he says the exact same things now that he said then. This acts as a symbol to letter cipher key builder for us, and we can convert the symbols contained within his text to letters, which we can then apply to the rest of the game. Give me just a little longer though, before we retroactively go back and translate stuff. We still have to collect the golden gearboxes scattered throughout the level here by going to where the Alpha Gwebble stood before, and picking up a wingsuit to fly to these structures located out in the wasteland that now surrounds Fern Field. I try my best to be understanding of a segment like this, and even think critically about it. I thought at first the shapes might be trying to be extra-dimensional mathematical objects like a Mobius strip or a Klein bottle. Then I thought they might be objects from other levels in the game, and then I tried to draw a conclusion about how the World Eater was located outside this world's portal, and it's extremely empty like Hyper Heights when he eats it. But this really just seems to be random geometry holding the gearboxes, which is fine I guess, but this segment's extremely boring. boring. The desert bus of a happy place. I'll sing this game's praises in 100 different ways, so I feel like I can say this slogfest here is boring. After we collect the gears, we have to leave this area via a rocket, which is located on the back of Fern Field, which has become a moving Goliath. I really don't understand what I'm doing right or wrong here, as in the current version of the game, it will use its extremities to bat you away if you get too close, and in my playthrough I managed to get it to stop doing that eventually, but I don't know if it was a 3 strikes you're out situation or a you finally got close enough to him to stop him situation. Regardless, if you're struggling with this area, just quit out of the game and refire it up, and you'll start where you started Fern Field this time and can get to the rocket easily from there. We're returned back to the monochrome room, and you might be compelled to just leave, but you might notice the level entrance portal for Fern Field Revisited has been moved back, which reveals for us a new room we can enter. Inside are the stick people we've now seen in 2 instances before, once when a Gwebble was Gwebble-napped, and the other one blocking a door in Clock Tower in Cinnamon City. They're standing in a circle on a chessboard, and if you get close, music will play and they'll start dancing. In the back of this room is something much more interesting though. A still statue of the man we've seen several times sitting on a chair looking out into the distance. We can get a much better look at him here and see his face. All throughout my playthrough of this game, I kept calling this guy John Stamos, and I still think he kinda looks like him, but this is the only time I'll say it in this video, lest it become unfunny. We can look at his leg and see it's deformed like B's was once he and R were caught back in Rigged Ridge. Again, doesn't seem overly important to me, but the dev focuses on it in his playthrough, so it's important for us to too. Another thing Ziggity draws our attention to is what this guy is looking at, which again, to use his words,
Look at what he's looking at.
The moon.
But then to the left is the not white dot. Wow, that's so cool.
Let's move on and out of here, where we can see the dancing stick figures are spread throughout the house, or I guess houses? Regardless, that's all to this final level, where we've now got 10 rockets and 4 crystal gearboxes, which means 1 last bonus level and 1 last hub to go. This hub is uniquely not that hidden, but instead locked behind a door that only opens when you have the other 4 gears. Going inside, we have to collect gear parts from around the ship, and can read the many terminal entries spread throughout this area. Part 5 of the terminal entries is titled Vessel 2.0, and the first of the entries breaks down what exactly the vessel is. The vessel is a flexible and intelligent set of machines that's guided the Brotherhood through the cosmos and the greater cosmos. It's the cornerstone of their exploration, research, and efficiency. 5.2 postures a thought about everything here being made of the entropy substance described earlier, that the fact that everything's comprised of it must mean something. 5.3 announces an exciting new pursuit for the Brotherhood, a new vessel. 5.4 describes that vessel in detail as an improved version of the current version of the vessel, version 1.688. A vessel comprised of solid steel and infused with a fabricated version of entropy that's capable of taking spiritual input. This newest version of the vessel includes new abilities including light speed travel, endless deductive reasoning, and the ability to be used subconsciously. All of these new abilities though pale in comparison to its most impressive addition, the ability to be absorbed and expelled from the user. Entropy's chemical spectrality is perfect for absorbing and being absorbed. With this, the vessel can live inside anyone for infinite versatility. Entry 5.5 expands on the ability of the Vessel 2.0 to be used subconsciously, as entropy allows those comprised of it to work as simply as though it were a muscle, a bone, and a nervous system all in one. This explains how all the native beings in the universe function. They're uniform, in one. 5.6 says that when they fired up the vessel for the first time, for some unexplained reason, all the components turned gold. So we'll take a break here and cover a few things, because this is the most text in one hub area. The components turned gold, so it's very clear at this point that the vessel which the Brotherhood describes are the gearboxes we've been picking up, and the rockets we've been compiling from those collected gearboxes. It also explains at the beginning of the game how and why we were saved by the components spontaneously. Remember when we were almost eaten and killed in the belly of the monster from before, but the golden rocket saved us, B must have unknowingly used the rocket to save himself, and that rocket was one piece of this vessel that's now been described to us as being a spaceship that can travel at light speed and has endless deductive reasoning. But let's talk about that light speed part for a second. So the current vessel 1.688 is incapable of light speed travel, so how are these guys exactly spacefaring? For those who might not be aware, or for those who are, just to set the stage, space is pretty damn big. Consider our own solar system for example. From Earth to the Sun, the unmanned Genesis probe launched back in 2001 took 3 years and 1 month to make it to the Sun. This is wildly optimistic for a manned expedition to the Sun, and frankly unfeasible at this point, and compared to light speed, which takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds, conventional space travel is almost 195,000 times slower than light speed. I mention all that because these guys are spacefaring, but how? Well, we know they're comprised of different species, so do they just live to 1,000,000 years old and travel slowly? Or maybe with their technology, which we understand to be capable of creating artificial intelligence and magic powers, they travel the galaxy? I suppose it could be either, but probably not. Instead, I want to direct your attention to the very first terminal entry, page 1, chapter 1, where AW talks about how they made an emergency exit crash landing after performing a non-Euclidean jump through what he called a non-Euclidean gate. I think it's more likely that these guys are spacefaring, but also combine it with these non-Euclidean jumps using these exits or gates. I tried to explain roughly earlier the idea of what non-Euclidean geometry was, and I used the example walking through your bathroom door and suddenly being in Times Square. So what if the example was instead flying through a galaxy and through a door and ending up in a happy place? It's still convoluted, I understand, but I think you might understand why it starts to make sense. So if I can suspend your disbelief that far, what if I told you we might have seen non-Euclidean gates and jumps already, maybe even the whole game? We're getting to the point where a lot of the evidence is laid out and we can start drawing conclusions, especially as these final info dumps come in, and I want to make it clear that I'll make it clear when something is just straight up a theory or presumption, and that's exactly what this is a theory. But all throughout the game, as we've traveled from level to level, we've jumped into these purple portals, which have instantly teleported us into levels, and then we've taken the rockets to get out of them. What if the portals were what let us non-Euclidean jump or teleport to these levels? Maybe not, admittedly, but we've got a little bit more to look at, so let's table this for now. Back to the entries, 5.7 describes the composition of this vessel as 11 components, or as I've been calling them, rockets. Each component is made up of 5 gearboxes, and each gearbox is made up of 6 small pieces, just like they've been for the whole game for us. 5.8 describes a very ominous event as the sky starts losing its color and the environmental lighting starts getting less consistent. The next terminal entry, 5.9, is largely corrupted, but what we can read of it says, "Past the last horizon I found," and then probably U, as there's clearly a Y and more letters that are cut off by the end of this terminal. It then says, "Entropy," that suits a name, and then transforms part of the sentences to gradually say, "Who are you?" And then, "You should stay with entropy," spelled like all kinds of crazy hell. And finally, "And the final midden dream, like an island by sharp wind." We'll just pump the brakes for 2 quick seconds. So this being starts warping the terminal to say these things, and seems like it reads the terminal entries to discover the name entropy, which it feels suits it as a name. It then asks who this person is that's writing on the terminal, and tells them that they should stay here with entropy. And again, those intro lines from the beginning of the game. Continuing on to the 10th terminal entry here, AW mentions that the Brotherhood and hubs across the island are now in hiding, as after the color of the sky changed, they detected an object of cosmic size heading their way. AW describes the surrealness as presumably they've had to fight their way out of situations before, and even run, but never have they had to hide before. 5.11 reports the intent to prepare the vessel to gather the hubs and flee, but that there's likely not even time for that. They detect something is messing with their devices. 5.12 says that the cosmic object approached much too quickly to get Hub 3 or the Vessel 2.0 ready for departure, so they're abandoning them here. They're instead traveling to Hub 4 to collect the personnel. 5.13 is a corrupted entry that asks the writer AW if he can see it. 5.14 is an update that the very ground beneath the Brotherhood tried to attack them. Large stretches of the entropy material speared into the bottom of the vessel, and was the iridescent variant that up until now they'd only seen in out-of-the-way areas. The log suddenly is interrupted again with the same question. Do you see me, AW? 5.15 continues this battle by saying entropy globs formed a claw and grabbed the ship, and that many members of the Brotherhood had to use their abilities to remove the ship from its grip. AW's body suddenly changes. His fingers, limbs, and clothes and everything becomes polygonal. The once vibrant world is dark and gray. And the same question, do you see me, AW? 5.16 closes out this immediate battle with news that Hub 3 and the vessel they left behind was hit by a glob of entropy and were buried. AW saw the gearboxes escape from under the collar as the artificial intelligence tries to escape entropy. 5.17 clarifies that never before now had entropy showed any signs of life of its own, nor did it ever show supernatural communication abilities. It has the ability to communicate like a celestial, which you might remember was what the friendly spiny spirit called his ghost-faced friends in the cave. It must mean that celestials speak in some way that is not speaking, and since we never saw the heads in the cave move their mouths, I wonder if that means they communicate through telepathy. Maybe not though, considering entropy's failed attempts to communicate with the people aboard the Brotherhood ships, as I imagine telepathy wouldn't have had a reason not to work. Oh well, maybe some other way of speaking to them then. This entry ends with a more pointed question toward the writer. Do you see me, Atreus W? So we've now got the terminal writer and the supreme director of the Brotherhood's first name, Atreus. Entry 5.18 says that the cosmically large being has been identified as a snake-like entropy creature. An asterisk and a footnote at the bottom of this entry clarifies that this being is estimated to be bigger than a universe and can travel at light speed. In addition, by entropy clarifies that it can do more things too. Atreus asks in 5.19 if entropy attacked because they made the vessel 2.0, and entropy responds by saying, "You must stay." The next entry continues this conversation, and Atreus asks, "Why must we?" 5.21 is a report that entropy's voice suddenly rang out through the devices in the ship, and through Atreus's mind, and that whoever entropy is, they speak Magish. I couldn't even imagine how these symbols would sound as dialogue. Also, I guess it is confirmed that telepathy is how the Celestials speak, and that entropy is capable of it as well. Entropy doesn't respond well to the realization that Atreus knows what Magish is, and asks him how he knows it. Entropy then says, "You must dread the next eons for this abomination against me," which makes you wonder if he's more mad about the fact that Atreus knows what Magish is, or if he's responding to Atreus' question from earlier asking if he's upset that they created the vessel 2.0. We're wrapping up the last of the terminal entries here, don't worry. Entry 22 has Atreus half addressing entropy and half trying to make a log by lamenting that the Brotherhood has met gods before and that they've traveled to the afterworld, which seems to me to be half an answer to entropy's question asking how they know Magish, and half a setup to tell entropy that he is to be feared for having this ancient knowledge and the power over this universe that he commands. Atreus was able to save the personnel, but he's leaving behind the hubs. They're preparing for liftoff from Hub 5, and if they all make it out of here, it will be by the skin of their teeth. The last proper terminal entry has Atreus preparing for liftoff with the members of his crew and saying goodbye to the greatest evil he's ever known. This greatest evil responds and tells him that he'll be seeing them again soon. Hidden past the bottom of this entry is Finis Temporis written over and over again, which in Latin means end of time. So obviously entropy wants these guys to stay and punish them for creating the vessel 2.0 and has dedicated himself now to presumably hunting across the universe for these guys who were able to get away. And as he said, he'll be pursuing them until the end of time. Now I said that was the last terminal entry proper, but there is one last one to read, which is a personal note addressed as "To the young man." Atreus says that he felt horribly guilty as they fled this universe, as he had seen the young man on the surface and knew the fate that entropy had in mind for him, but suddenly his guilt had left him as Atreus detected a piece of vessel 2.0 inside him. He warns the young man that entropy will try to kill them, but he'll be unable to with the vessel 2.0 hidden inside them. Atreus says to look for all 55 gearboxes and find an exit. He warns that the Brotherhood is taking the only exit they found, which was up, and it will close once they go through it. So to instead look for another exit. Find the lowest area on the island, and the machine will do the rest. He then wishes the young man good luck from the Knights of Veritas. Signed, Atreus W., Brotherhood's Supreme Director. And with that, you can breathe a sigh of relief as the terminal entries are done, and we can collect the last gearbox after getting all the pieces scattered about here. So Atreus made it out of here, if only just barely, with the Brotherhood of the Knights of Veritas, and told us to look down for an exit, to go as deep as possible with all 11 components. When we go to leave Hub 5 to finish the bonus level, and as we exit the ship, we can see the man from before standing menacingly right outside of the entrance. As you approach him, he'll suddenly disappear, and we can make our way to the pit and start the good ending. I mentioned a pool room earlier and said that it doesn't do anything until we collect all 11 components, and once we do, we can see the bright, shining golden vessel 2.0. We hop inside and come to another gray textureless area. The vessel here is flipped upside down, I think to further signify that we're going down into the depths. This area is mostly empty, but at the top of one of the areas here you can platform to, you'll see a man with his hands over his face, who is an entropy-fied version of the man we've seen a few times throughout the game now. So I've been bearing the lead sort of by not out and out saying it, but at this point I should make it clear that this man we've been seeing throughout the game and entropy are one and the same. I mean, the progression of him from normal dude to monster to normal dude, we've seen so much throughout the game would clue you into it. So now when we refer to some dark figures, the man, the serpent being from the sky, and entropy, they're all one. This character of him speaks in Magish, and I swear to God we're going to go over all the Magish dialogue soon. Just give me a little more time. On the wall beside him are little dolls or figurines of some characters like B and R. We've got a portal of some kind that R is falling into, and visible only from the other side of the model is a character dressed in green. On top of the portal is B, and a mostly invisible character model with maybe a golden sash across their chest. There are also the missing posters of R here from before strung up on the wall of the portal here, but I don't know how well you'll be able to see them because they're very, very tiny. Then on the other side of the platform up here, you can see a house with several of these dolls all on the front porch, and inside of the house is the dark entropy goop figure we've seen before. I think this is obviously saying something about how people got here and their motivations, but let's get a little bit more evidence and we'll address these figurines. Jumping down from here and over to what kind of looks like an arena, we'll see entropy kicked back on the wall just waiting and watching. He won't hurt you here, so this is probably the most normal he'll look and the closest you'll be able to get while looking at him. Just a chill looking fella when he isn't randomly killing everybody. We can step on the circle here and we'll be sent through a short gauntlet of all the levels we've played so far, all while entropy chases us around these maps. Once we've stepped on the last circle and climb a few pillars, we're dropped down into a huge arena where once we approach entropy, he splits into 5 butterflies and travels to different corners of the map. A slow giant entropy creeps up in the background, and once so much time has passed, he'll begin to attack you. This is really a boss that you kinda need to get muscle memory for and get good at timing your dodges, but he's not overly hard at the same time. He's got beams which are probably as easy as the tack to dodge, and then he can summon a circle of himself. You're supposed to look for the big gap in and thread the needle through that, but you can usually dodge between any of the gaps if you're careful. Then his most difficult attack to dodge is what I call the X planes, because it picks an X value between the floor and way over your head and covers that plane in an attack. If it's above you, that's easy enough to dodge, but if it's anywhere else, you'll need to stay in the air for as long as possible when you jump over it to dodge it. This attack actually becomes easier the more butterflies you collect, and the faster his attack pattern gets, because on the one hand you've got a shorter window to dodge, but on the other hand you've got a shorter window you have to stay in the air to avoid being hit. Then there are traps laid throughout the map that my friends and I affectionately call the Poop Tower and the Poop Maze respectively, where you'll step in them and be consumed by a platforming challenge you have to quickly complete, all while you're being attacked. Also, as a little pro tip, let's say you've got 2 HP and you know you're going to die with your first character. Try to throw yourself off a ledge as the game puts you back in the center of the arena when you fall off. The screen will be black for a second when you go back. While there's no fall damage for this, you'll likely be hit by an attack or two while the screen clears, and in that time, you'll respawn as the other brother. Again, you'll probably be hit right off the bat, but your brother's orb is here and will heal you, and you've got your extra life back. So win-win-win in my book. After you've collected the last butterfly, entropy goes to attack you with a slap move, and when he pulls his hand back, he has a star inside of it. The star causes the gearboxes to suddenly begin impaling and trapping entropy, and it sucks him through a hole in the wall, I guess presumably sealing him. The vessel then descends and the screen cuts to all white before transitioning to a shot from and of a building in Salt Lake City, while in the corner it says The Beginning. If you wait here at this screen for a minute or so, music and birds chirping will slowly fade in, along with the 4 stars we saw in the grave in Cinnamon City. Now then, let's quickly get one more ending, the bad ending. Super short, I promise. When you start the game, all the way back when Fern Field was normal and before you collected your first gearbox, don't collect a single gearbox, and instead collect all the moles in the level. After you do this, make your way to the Mole Village, where you'll see a man who looks like one of the brothers, but with green, and wearing what I think are called bolo ties. So we've got R with a bow tie, B with a necktie, and now this guy with a bolo tie. When you get close to him, he'll suddenly transform into a taller, more menacing version of himself, while instantly making the world evil looking. It's actually a funny combination of all 3 versions of the map, and cycles through them quickly and vigorously. He'll slowly pick up speed, and his skin peels off into the entropy substance as he chases you. When he grabs you, the screen will suddenly cut to B on the ground with white eyes, unmoving, and a white butterfly on his corpse. If you pan the camera around to the opposite side it starts from, you'll see R in much the same position, motionless, and a white butterfly on his corpse. I've had a lot of trouble with this Easter egg, but if you start pressing a bunch of buttons on your controller, not including the pause button, don't touch the pause button, it fucks it. The game should crash, and when you fire it back up, B should be consumed by the entropy goop spikes, and the floating heads from before all hover around him watching. So I think we at least have an idea of what white eyes mean now. White eyes seem to clearly be someone who's had their soul or life force or whatever sucked out of them. In all cases, they appear to be motionless and miserable, and in the case of our frog friend, can communicate to us how horrible it feels to have your mind, body, and soul consumed and absorbed. So in this ending, it's pretty clear that entropy has had time to catch up with you with all your goofing around collecting moles, and at the same time being unsafe having not collected any gearboxes to save yourself from him. What that culminates into is a bad ending where B and by extension R are both caught by entropy and everything about them absorbed. We'll do a full story coverage from beginning to end in a second, but first, we've got a ballpark to explore. To remind you of what the ballpark was, to the side of Misty Grove Hub World 2, there was this big sphere-looking thing that you could walk on invisible platforms toward and into to be transported to a black and white area. I skipped straight to the bonus level accessible from here, but now let's instead explore this area properly. My first reaction was how similar in color and vibe this place is when compared to the Fern Field revisit. It doesn't feel as empty, but the grayscale and stillness of the areas are very similar. There are details around this area. The whole town looks like it was made of cardboard and then drawn on by a child, like a cardboard city if you ever did that. There are still NPCs around, which are textureless versions of regular NPCs we've seen throughout the game. Harley is probably the first one you'll see, and she says, "He watches from above." Screechy Yeechy here says, "The strength of one's soul." Mr. Pigeon says, "Care for a drink?" Ivan says, "None of this is real." Jolie Moly says, "Death is a false hope. Nobody really dies here." Murphy says, "What else could be invoked but the deepest existential dread?" A spiny spirit on a building says, "I once resided in heaven. Even from the dead, many still fall here." The real King Kitt on a ledge says, "The last horizon. The final midnight dream," once again echoing the intro text. And finally, Captain Prawn says, "You know something I don't." Before I say what I think of all this, let me also explain the church here in Ballpark. Inside of a church here in Ballpark is a statue of human entropy, and in the pews of this church sit NPCs, or they would if I had one. This game pulls from the unique PC identifier on your computer to generate which NPCs will spawn here and how many. So far, the range seems to be at least between 0 and 4 NPCs who will all say cryptic things. Full transparency, this is a part of the story that hasn't been fully fleshed out, as it's been revealed that there are 10 NPCs with dialogue here in the church, and only 6 of them have been uncovered as of yet. The lines are all odd snippets of dialogue, and if you want to hear the order I can best assume they go in, it goes as follows. Which one is concerning? The older Weira boy. Then the third line is yet to be found. And then, the strongest there has ever been. He has only been a threat for Earthian decades, yet his powers compound to no end. Then 2 more lines that haven't been found yet, and then, they might catch us. And finally, one last line that's yet to be found. Now, how did I draw that conclusion for the placement of the lines? Well, someone was able to find that the random letters at the end of these lines were all supposed to be typed in a specific order to unlock one last secret, and so we've got the equation, the solution, but not yet all of the pieces that act as variables. I thought that some of the lines we'd heard so far sound like a conversation, and so with that, I plugged in what we had so far and came up with their most likely ordering and which parts are still missing. Dr. Dirk here once again from the editing room. Between the start of making this video and now, a member of the community actually was able to pull all of the church members' dialogue and iterate it in text form. It goes incomplete as follows. Which one is concerning? The older Weira boy. How strong could he be? The strongest there has ever been. He has only been a threat for Earthian decades, yet his powers compound to no end. Should we leave soon? As soon as possible. They might catch us. By this point, what could anybody do? So, good news and bad news. The good news is we got our wish and now we know what all the dialogue in the church says. The bad news is it's not very helpful, nor does it give us much more perspective on what's going on in a happy place or with entropy. It's kind of funny because if you ask me, the lines of dialogue that we had before now were the only really important lines of the whole thing, so regardless. Once again, my closing thoughts might be a little bit more muddied with the omission of this new evidence, but I find it important still to map out progress for my line of thinking for this deep dive. Please enjoy the rest of your video. Let me go ahead and bombshell you one more time with a huge strip of lore we only got from the dev playthrough. Listen to this.
Yeah, so I might as well reveal like one thing since we just did all the secrets. You know Atreus?
Uh-huh.
You know how he signs everything as AW?
Yeah.
Maybe at some point in the game there was a word that starts with W that was plastered along a wall.
In the grave, what was it? WIA something? What was it?
I don't know. Rewind back to that point in the video.
And that probably correlates with the 4 stars.
So we know that Atreus' last name is Weira, which matches up with the terminal entries where he was shorthanded to AW. Now I'd say generally Atreus seems like a good guy. Let's reread that dialogue and interject with some relevant info. Which one is concerning? The older Weira boy. So Atreus either is or has an older brother, a third unknown line, and then the strongest there has ever been. He has only been a threat for Earthian decades, yet his powers compound to no end. So this character is the strongest of some description that there has ever been, so much so that despite the fact he's only been a threat for a few decades, his powers compound to no end. Basically, he's wicked strong. And finally, they might catch us, sandwiched between unknown lines. So what do I think? Well, being extremely presumptuous here, it seems to me like Atreus' brother might be Entropy. My knee-jerk reaction to this rationally, though, is that surely one of them would recognize the other. But concerning Atreus to Entropy, he can't really tell a whole lot from chunks of Entropy gunk swallowing his ship. And concerning Entropy to Atreus, Entropy really doesn't strike me as someone who's all there. He kinda acts like a dickhead randomly, and is nearly incapable of having a conversation. When he talks via text, he repeats himself again and again, sometimes in Latin, and when he talks telepathically, he speaks in Magish, and it's important to remember that it's telepathy, not mind reading, so it's not likely they'd see memories of one another, just talk. So I'd venture a guess he either didn't see Atreus himself, or that he's too far gone to recognize his brother, at least while he's trying to kill him. Again, we're drawing conclusions with charcoal here. This is kind of as good as it gets, but the two seem to be strongly implied to be related. Now what about the dialogue around Ballpark that isn't necessarily the church dialogue? What does it mean? Well, I want to start with Captain Prawn's dialogue first. He says something you directly hear in the game from him in "You know something I don't." And then King Kitt also says the dialogue we've heard several times now, "The last horizon, the final midnight dream," which to this point, excluding the intro, has been written only by Entropy. So what do I think these lines mean? Well, I wonder if these Phantom NPCs aren't lines that Entropy himself has heard someone say before, and what the Ballpark is a kind of sanctuary where the lines he's heard leak through. We can confirm the Prawn lines ourselves, and the Murphy line about the deepest existential dread is an only slightly modified version of something Atreus said in his terminal entry about Entropy. And of course, as I already mentioned, the King Kitt line is straight from Entropy. Now, a wrench in that thought, if you will. As I've done this whole video pretty much, I've saved the most important info in Ballpark for last. In a room near the beginning of Ballpark, there's a book that's been drawn in of two characters. On the left is a man named Beethoven, next to Big Ben and the United Kingdom flag, who's wearing a necktie and has the 4 stars we've seen a couple times now in the corner. On the other page is Arnold, who wears his bow tie, is next to the Leaning Tower of Pisa with an Italian flag, and in the very top right, in a super small text, it says Step Brothers. So there's your revelation. Not only are B&R's names Beethoven and Arnold, but they're actually stepbrothers and from Europe. Gross. Seriously though, what are the important revelations we can draw from this? Well, firstly, let's focus on the stars. I think it's pretty obvious the stars are important, but why? In the cave where Weira's name was written, we saw the stars. In the good ending of the game, we saw the stars. And here we are now again seeing the stars. Well, Weira, according to the developer, has some kind of a connection to the stars. And I can do you a favor and tell you B&R do too. I don't know exactly where you can see this outside of this instance, but in the game selector image for Steam, you can see B&R around the logo alongside the red and blue stars, so that leaves us with the green and white stars. And even though B&R's collars don't correlate to their shirts, I do think Entropy Star is probably green and the other white star is likely Atreus. So let's bring things home as best we can with the star people. Let's look back up to where we had the warped entropy in the miniatures of characters. So we can see R falling into a portal here, which might alternatively be the non-Euclidean gates we've heard of. Certainly might make more sense. So R falls in, and on the other side, we can see the green model, which we can likely understand to be entropy now, which makes me wonder if R accidentally entered this portal, or if instead he went in of his own volition. I can't imagine they leave non-Euclidean gates just lying around after all. There's no evidence for this, mind you, just a thought, as surely all the stars are related somehow. Then, on top of the gate, we can see B near the figure with the sash on his chest, and the missing posters all around them, so it seems almost assuredly as though at least B has a connection with this golden sash character, who's likely Atreus. How are they related though? Beats me. I'll say this though, the dialogue in the church said the older Weira boy, not the oldest Weira boy, where you'd use older to compare two things and oldest to compare several. Must be some other connection besides brotherhood. Moving on to the miniature house, I literally have no idea the point of this. There's 3 B's, 3 R's, 2 entropies, and 1 Atreus, so there's no great number correlation I can draw. The only guess I can make, and if you ask me my certainty, I tell you it's around 10% possible, is the number of models correlates to the generation of Weira boys. So 1 golden sash is the grandfather, 2 entropies means that it would be the golden sash's son, the second generation, and the 3 B's and R's means that they would be the grandsons, which I suppose isn't completely out of the realm of thought, but that would just be wild conjecture. Also, I don't know where else to put it, but is R's last name 4? The poster at the beginning of the game says R64, and it would at least justify R's last name being different and B's potentially still being Weira if they're stepbrothers. Oh well, I don't know. But what I do know is that I owe you a whole slew of translated text, don't I? Let's start with the Dark World Fern Field signs. They say in no particular order, was I really so bad? There was no failure from me, only care. Everything I could. Why did they not love me? There was nothing left. Why? Everything was so... and my own friend. I think this is undoubtedly pulled straight from Entropy's thoughts, and unfortunately without more context we can't really understand much more than the fact he's very forlorn. Next, we'll translate the text that was written on the wall in the Dark World segment of coastal Cliffside. Unfortunately, the wall is largely obscured by shadow, but what we can read says, take removed assets to, and then something we can't see, repurposing, and more stuff we can't see, and finally the letters O and N, which are likely part of a word that we can't see. Hate to say it, but no answer for you guys here again. Maybe it's more context for Entropy and how he got here? Dr. Dirk from the editing room here. I actually made a breakthrough in this wall of text while making this video. If you reload the game after securing the checkpoint near the sunken SS Shrimper, the wall will be illuminated. The full text reads, take removed assets to lower level for repurposing or consumption. We have no idea what these assets are, and considering Entropy's absorption, it's surely related to him somehow, but without more information your mind runs wild with the possibilities. As this is an addendum to my original script, closing remarks will sound a little odd. Sorry about that. Enjoy the rest of the video. If you want, feel free to wait for my thoughts at the end because I'll be giving them. But for sure conclusions we can back up with evidence here? None, sorry. And finally, one last big chunk of text from the warped entropy we saw near the miniature models that reads in length, "You refuse the notion, but I make it still, that existence and intelligence together are the deepest hell. Existence is a permanent mystery, unsolvable by the existing. Intelligence cannot be understood by the said intelligent. It has driven me into the depths. This fear defines me. With my start, the end is what waits. I am blind to all else. I have stared down the infinite dread of nothing, and it calls for us all. I must continue consuming, and fueling, and shifting, and managing, and creating, and so on. Eternities pass me by, and I rarely notice. I have fallen over the end of the subjects and objects repeatedly. I have no place other than life. It's all I am. I wait stationary, surrounded, with nothing to my left and null to my blind. I know all of anything. I know about nothing. And that's it. 3 more super short secrets, and I'll try and bring everything home and tell you what I think. The first secret, which you might not notice your first trip through the light world Fern Field, is if you make your way to the cave overlooking the Moly village where you start in Fern Field Revisited, you can see the lanky entropy. Then, when it turns to the dark world, you can see the R and B entropy look-alike with the bolo tie, but this time he's all covered in entropy gunk. Doesn't mean anything, I don't think, just looks cool in my opinion. Finally, I'd mentioned a code from before that you were supposed to get from the NPCs in Entropy's Ballpark Church. But what does it do? Well, a happy place is only playable with a controller, but if at any point you're playing, you type into your keyboard the string of letters, the game will instantly crash. Then, the next time you fire up the game, the Save Select menu will be replaced with Entropy standing still beside your menu instead. If you type the code in again after this point, it'll crash again, and when you fire the game up from here, there'll be a warped Entropy over top of the menus here, and it'll slowly fade away over time. Not super cool, but cool enough, I guess. And that's the entire game, and all the secrets I know of right now. So what do I think exactly? Well, to start at the beginning, the state of the world seems to be pretty advanced for some reason. There's spacefaring people thanks presumably to the vessel, and in addition to that, many people seem to have powers of some kind. Space travel has also made it possible to meet other species. Entropy, a young man, is revealed to be extremely powerful, even when compared to a world of superpowered people. I presume that power is something that's dangerous or something he only has some control over, as his text often laments his predicament and seeming betrayal. Regardless, Entropy is then sealed away for the good of the world through a non-Euclidean gate, while he'll be far away from endangering anybody else. In this new world, Atreus turns everything polygonal looking, like a video game. Through some kind of unfortunate happenstance, this new world, we'll call it a happy place, is a hot spot for people to fall into as different species and races from all across the galaxies and universes make their way here. Even the undead and spirits, even whole civilizations like the Kittans who were undefeated until they met Entropy. It's unclear exactly why. Maybe he can't help it, or maybe he's a sociopath. But Entropy consumes and absorbs them all, and that's articulated through these white butterflies that leave their bodies. I also think that the bosses of the game are closely related to and more involved puppets of Entropy's. In Hub 3, we can see the still bodies of most of the bosses in the game, and then the dialogue from Crumblin the Mummy, who's the boss of Calcium Catacombs, which Ziggity brought special attention to when he says, the 37th annual quiz extravaganza. Maybe that's how old Entropy is, or how long he's been sealed away. That starts dragging in some problems with the numbers across the board, but it's just a thought. Atreus, either Entropy's father or brother, eventually becomes the supreme director of the Brotherhood of the Knights of Veritas and travels the galaxy braving new frontiers. Time passes and Beethoven and Arnold, 2 brothers who might be the son and stepson of Entropy or some other relation, grow up into young men themselves, and Arnold, for one reason or another, travels through a non-Euclidean gate and ends up in the same universe as Entropy. Beethoven takes up the search for his brother, and maybe even at Atreus' urging, points him in the direction of the non-Euclidean portals as a way of traveling, and maybe where R went. B then follows R to a happy place, and they both narrowly miss Atreus, who had just made his escape from this place after creating the Vessel 2.0, which broke into pieces and scattered itself across the world. B meets back up with R, and together they travel through the world and collect those gear pieces. Their perception of their situation matches yours, as though you feel you're beating levels and winning a video game. But to the people here, they're all victims of Entropy and don't find it quite as fun or lighthearted. In the bad ending, Entropy catches you while you don't have the protection of the gearboxes, and you're killed and absorbed by him. In the neutral ending, you beat King Kitt, but nothing really happens or changes in a happy place. And in the good ending, you're able to take the vessel down into the depths of a happy place, defeat Entropy, seal him away, and presumably leave this world. We also don't fully understand what all the lines about "past the last horizon" mean yet. If you wanted a very basic answer, it seems like Entropy uses it to talk about nothingness or absorption, as he's threatened you through the fake King Kitt with being shown something worse than death. Past the last horizon. And then when we read his trauma dump from the warped entropy model near the miniatures, he talks about loneliness and emptiness in existence, and uses the line, "nothing to my left and null to my blind," which is an only slightly modified version of the intro text. Otherwise, we're just waiting for clarification on the relationship between the Starbearers, and probably confirmation on magic and technology like the non-Euclidean gates and what kind of powers a person might have in this magical new world. And it's kinda up to the creator where this story might go next. In his Discord, Ziggity has shared a few images of his next game, and it looks to me like a Warhammer joint, but I'm sure it's not. I hope it's not. And with all that, we close things out here on another deep dive video. I truly hope you all enjoyed, because this game's a real hidden gem, let me tell you. And even at its most basic gameplay and storytelling, it feels like you're playing a commercial version of B3313 or some kind of other haunted ROM hack. But this one has its own storytelling and really is feature length. I was pretty suspicious of the creator's claim that the game was between 6 and 8 hours long, especially looking at the pictures, but was very pleasantly surprised to find that certainly was the case. I mean, hell, I've been talking about it for almost an hour and a half now, and I'm just talking about it, I'm not even playing it. I don't usually do this because I trust that my viewers are smart enough that if they're interested in a creator or a game I talk about, that you can find them yourself. But for this video, in addition to linking the game, I'll be linking all of Ziggity's socials so that you can follow him. If there's fire, you want to be on the ground floor, and trust me folks, Ziggity's games are going to be fire. His second game was a feature-length N64 styled collectathon that blended all these story and gameplay elements I've been talking about magically, and he did all of that in an engine that really wasn't made to handle those things. So personally, I'm pretty impressed. Ziggity has moved on from the genre of horror for now, which might disappoint his old fans of Mario Dolor or his new fans of A Happy Place, but he's talked about some really promising projects he's working on, both by himself and with others, including an RPG and some Pikmin-like game, and they all sound awesome to me. And I mean, if we want answers to all the questions we have to follow him, right? Right. Anyways, thank you for watching if you made it to the end here. I'm sure there's some small details I forgot to include, and I'm doubly sure we won't have found every secret just yet, but generally, I feel confident that this is a good launching board into understanding the upcoming Ziggity universe. I'll see you all next week. Later!